Welcome to our information webinar for applicants. This presentation will explain the Canadian Forest Service Innovation Programs, specifically the Investments in Forest Industry Transformation, or IFIT program. I'm sharing my screen here, so hopefully everyone can see a copy of the presentation. This presentation will be given in English as per the registration information, but a French presentation will be delivered on August 23rd. My name is Chelsea Hockley, so I'm a program officer with the IFIT program team, and I'm joined by a few of my colleagues here today. So a few of them will be active in the chat. We've got our manager, Daphne Ho, our director, Jean-François Levasseur, and a couple of our technical and senior technical advisors. So Yannick Levasseur and Jen Reed are also on the line and will be helping to respond to some questions throughout. So I'd like to begin by recognizing that we're all gathering from different parts of the country, and we would like to extend our respect and honor to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable past and present contributions to this land. We also recognize that Natural Resources Canada on 580 Booth Street is on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose presence here reaches back millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. As the host of this meeting, I wish to reiterate with you that the presentation portion of this meeting will be recorded. So the Q&A portion of the meeting will not be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, you may choose to leave this meeting. The recording captures the audio, video, and screen sharing activity and captures the list of attendees. Again, if you do not wish to be recorded, the recording will be made available on the IFIT website, so all recordings are subject to the Access to Information and Privacy Acts. We have put in place a few safety measures to protect your privacy, such as disabling your microphone and camera until the Q&A portion of the webinar begins. During the presentation, please feel free to use the chat function or reaction icons if there are any technical issues that you would like to raise. This presentation will provide an overview of the Canadian Forest Service Innovation Programs, but will focus primarily on the IFIT program. So this presentation will be given in 4 parts. First, we'll go over the objectives of the webinar, some housekeeping rules, along with an overview of the program. Secondly, we'll go over the information specific to the IFIT program streams and the application and evaluation process. Then in part 3, we'll provide an overview of our submission process. And lastly, this presentation will allow time for a Q&A at the end. Just check in here, make sure everything's going all right. Like everything's working, so that's good. So firstly, we'll get started on some of the housekeeping rules here. So this presentation is being recorded. A recording of the presentation will be shared with all attendees afterwards and will be available on the website. Please feel free to submit a question at any time by using the chat function. Please only use the chat for questions throughout the presentation or for any technical issues. My colleagues will be responding to the questions throughout the presentation as possible. When you see a check mark appear, this will indicate that someone's preparing a response to your question. We will only respond to program-related questions, so should you have any specific project-related questions, please email the IFIT inbox and a program officer will be able to directly contact you to have a more tailored conversation. During the Q&A portion of the webinar, your microphone and camera will also be disabled unless you have a question. So to indicate that you have a question, please use the raise your hand icon under the reaction function, and a moderator will enable your microphone and camera functions. Please unmute and turn your video on if you would like to. You can also ask your questions in the chat to be answered by our presenters. The purpose of this session is to provide some additional context to the information provided in the IFIT applicant guidebooks, updated 2023, and the expression of interest, or EOI, application template. So the objective of this webinar is to offer you an overview of the program, explain our application process, and give you some additional information on our project selection process. After reviewing the information available on our website, as well as the information that you'll hear during this presentation today, we hope that potential applicants will be better prepared to submit a proposal to our program and bring forward any questions that you may have. Please keep in mind, however, that the material in this presentation and the explanations are simply a synopsis of the information that's contained in the applicant guidebooks and the expression of interest form. So the link to the website will be posted in the Teams chat, and it'll also be available throughout the presentation. So this slide has all the key links that you should need to successfully complete your expression of interest. You will find the link to the online submission portal. As a tip, please create an applicant profile prior to submitting an EOI. A navigation guide is available if you're experiencing IT issues, so please reach out to the program inbox for further guidance if this applies to you. You will also find a link to our downloadable template of our expression of interest application form. So we strongly recommend preparing your responses in this template offline before copying them into the online submission form. This way, you can collaborate with colleagues and collect input into the document, and you can paste your responses into the online submission portal once completed. You will notice that the expression of interest form has 3 available streams. So there's the capital investments from IFIT, the IFIT studies, and also the green construction through wood, or GC Wood demonstration. So this presentation is going to cover the IFIT streams only. However, the GC Wood program is another funding opportunity whose objectives are to encourage the increased use of wood as a low-carbon building material, which supports Canada's efforts to decarbonize the built environment, and to prioritize direct funding to areas of high growth potential that target low-carbon GHG emissions. So a separate webinar series is available for the GC Wood program beginning tomorrow. To register for the webinars, please email the program. If you'd like a copy of the webinar, please also reach out to the program. And so let's get back to IFIT. For those of you who are not familiar with the IFIT program, it was created under the federal budget in 2010. The program has seen many iterations of changes to continue to meet industry needs. It's a funding program administered by the Canadian Forest Service, a sector of Natural Resources Canada. The primary aims of the program are to improve environmental, social, and economic sustainability of the forest sector, to develop innovative products and processes within the forest sector, and to engage Canada's forest stakeholders in implementing new projects. The program will now be launching its ongoing call for expressions of interest with approximately $120 million in contribution funding over the next 3 years available to its funding streams. Well, moving on to part 2 of the presentation, we'll go over the IFIT program, what's new, and key information for your project. Since 2020, the program has had 2 funding streams available. The first stream, Stream 1, is our capital investments projects. This stream aims to support transformative projects by forest sector firms to diversify product streams, promote responsible resource use, and improve environmental performance. Capital investment projects may request up to $10 million in funding by the program. Our second stream, Stream 2, is the study stream. This aims to support studies by forest sector firms or industry accelerators that aim to advance key topics for innovation with widespread sharing of results. Studies may access up to $1 million in funding. To build on past successes, the program was renewed under Budget 2023 with roughly $120 million in contribution funding that will enable the next wave of innovation in the forest sector. For IFIT's ongoing call, there have been a few changes that we would like to bring to your attention. So firstly, we've expanded our eligible projects to include the early adoption of technologies to further advance innovation in the forest sector. Early adoption refers to the implementation of a process or technology before widespread adoption. It is likely to result in higher costs than what later adopters will pay. As such, the proposed project must be either the first installation at the proposed scale or specifications, or install recently developed technology under unproven conditions. An example of unproven conditions may include installation in a new region with differing power supplies, regulations, or logistical constraints. It may also include utilizing a different species of wood fiber and significantly adapting processes. So secondly, new to the program, we've introduced 2 new targeted technology categories, which we'll discuss in more detail on the next slide. And then third and finally, the program has transitioned to an ongoing call for expressions of interest, which will have a 2-phase approach. We'll go into more depth on this as well. IFIT's targeted innovation categories were identified based on previous application history and to align with the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers' Forest Bioeconomy Updated Framework and Canada's commitment to net zero emissions. As such, we've continued to tailor our current program to target highly innovative capital investments, and we now have 6 categories. Our first 4 are not new to the program. So the first one is advanced biomaterials and biochemicals, which develop innovative materials and high-value applications derived from wood components. Second is wood fiber-derived advanced biofuels from thermochemical or biochemical processes in liquid, gaseous, or solid form. Please note that the production of wood chips or white pellets as the biofuel would not be considered advanced and is not eligible to the IFIT program. Third is our next generation building products to create value-added structural and architectural applications, such as advanced wood-based building systems and materials. And fourth is pulp and paper diversification to support projects that lead to new products that significantly diversify revenue streams in an existing pulp and paper facility. Newly added this year, we have 2 new categories, which are process efficiency and decarbonization, to support projects leading to reduced energy consumption and GHG emission reductions or process improvements, and improved fiber utilization for projects that increase the use of harvest residuals, pest or fire damaged wood, reclaimed or recycled wood fiber, and other sources of underutilized wood fiber, resulting in value generated from the harvest wood. Projects that do not fall within the above categories will not be eligible under this call. The program will have a 2-phase approach. So the expression of interest is meant to be the initial proposal process, requesting high-level information about your project and its fit with the program, objectives, and evaluation criteria. The full project proposal phase will be by invitation only, following a review of your expression of interest. Application forms and other documents will only be made available as needed for the full project proposal. So we will now provide details specific to the funding streams. A reminder that the program has its 2 funding streams, Stream 1, the capital investments, and Stream 2, studies. So first we'll take a look at our capital investment projects. There we go. Sorry about that. So our capital investment projects should meet recipient eligibility criteria and the mandatory project eligibility criteria. In terms of the recipient eligibility, all applicants to this stream must be for-profit organizations located in Canada. They must either produce forest products in an existing forest product facility, or they will be new entrants in the forest sector for the purpose of this project. This includes clusters, joint ventures, and consortiums, provided that a for-profit company acts as the lead applicant. In terms of project eligibility, the proposed project must be primarily based on wood fiber or integrated within new or existing industrial processes in the forest sector. It must represent an innovative advancement of a technology or process improvement to ensure the competitiveness of operations in Canada's forest sector. And it must demonstrate a first-in-kind innovation or the early adoption of technology that requires further de-risking in a range of conditions before widespread implementation. Next, we'll look at the funding details for the program stream. So just like in past iterations of IFIT, the program can fund up to 50% of total project costs. But do keep in mind that projects leveraging more funding from other partners do get additional merit during the evaluation process. The program will consider funding up to $10 million per project, although the average IFIT contribution has been approximately $4 to $6 million. The funds are non-repayable, meaning that they do not need to be repaid to the Government of Canada unless the funds are not utilized for their intended purpose or they are spent on non-eligible costs. Total government assistance must not exceed 100% of total eligible project costs. For agreements signed in the first year of the program, IFIT may accommodate retroactive reimbursement of eligible expenditures incurred from April 1st, 2023 to the date of execution of the contribution agreement with NRCan. Retroactive expenditures will be limited to just 50% of NRCan's contribution, and this will be explored on a case-by-case basis. So should you have any further questions about your own project, please contact the program to discuss this further. The type of costs that you can incur as part of a project are relatively varied for capital projects, and you can see a few examples on the slide here. For a complete list, you can consult the application guidebook. The guidebook also provides some additional detail on what some of these costs include, so please make sure that your proposal is very clear on the types of costs that you intend on incurring. Any costs associated with the production or exports of softwood lumber are ineligible under this program. So all applications will be subject to a trade risk assessment. Next, we'll provide a bit of an overview on the rated criteria for capital investment projects. A reminder that these are explained in detail in the applicant guidebook. So firstly, technical feasibility. This is the degree to which the project is expected to be technically feasible and generate the desired outcome. This criterion requires applicants to substantiate the claims that the products and processes can be implemented and will generate the quantity and quality of product identified by the applicant. Second is our innovation. So preference will be given to projects demonstrating greater innovation and novelty. Third is partnerships. Preference will be given to projects involving strategic partnerships, including projects with Indigenous ownership or partnered with Indigenous groups that are directly involved and have an active, engaged role and stake in the success of the proposed project. Partnerships should be confirmed with letters of support, including the value of the contribution or support. We ask that if you do plan on submitting more than one letter of support, that they be combined into one document. Financial institutions or funding agencies, parent or cross-owned companies are not considered partners for this criterion. Note also that preference will be given to projects demonstrating a high proportion of total project costs, leveraged from industry partners and provinces, and those that can demonstrate secure and confirmed partnerships. So fourth, we have our business plan. Preference will be given to strong financial analysis, as well as credible and complete business and marketing plans. For larger commercial scale projects, priority will be given to projects with stronger financial prospects based on key economic indicators, including return on investment. Fifth is fiber supply. So preference will be given to projects that demonstrate how they're addressing fiber supply constraints or improving the fiber supply chain in their area. Proposals should clearly demonstrate how proponents will access the fiber required to implement and operate the project. For example, securing long-term supply deals. Sixth is timing or project readiness. So preference will be given to projects who propose the most credible and defensible project information. Next up is the value for investment. So the maximum amount payable by the program to a recipient is 50% of project costs, as mentioned. However, the preference will be given to projects where requested IFIT funds are of a lower proportion. Then we have our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So applicants will need to submit a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan with their full proposal. A template is available upon request. Diversity and inclusion plans will be rated as part of the project selection criteria, and projects will be evaluated on their approach to improving diversity and inclusion within their Canadian corporate structures, including at the facility level and/or across the organization. And lastly is our benefit to Canadians. So applicants should describe direct environmental, social, and economic benefits resulting from the project, as well as spillover benefits. For example, public benefits, such as hiring practices to improve diversity, or economic benefits, such as employment within the broader supply chain. All right. So if you are invited to the full project proposal phase, you will need to consider these application requirements. These are mandatory for the full project proposal. So please review the applicant guidebook on the IFIT website for this list, and make sure to keep checking the website for any updates. Documents required will be the financial analysis workbook, for which a template will be provided, a business plan, the organization chart, a project schedule in the form of a Gantt chart, the process flow diagram, the cost estimates within a 20% variance, diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, for which a template can be provided upon request, the preliminary engineering study or equivalent, a site layout plan, any study or trial results to date, if applicable, and any letters of support, if applicable. As mentioned earlier, we also have our study stream, so now we'll take some time to review the requirements for a study project. Eligible study projects must meet the mandatory recipient eligibility and mandatory project eligibility requirements. The recipient eligibility for studies includes for-profit organizations located in Canada and not-for-profits and industry associations. The proposed scope of work must include an industry collaboration with a demonstrated pathway towards commercial scale activities. These projects must either produce forest products in an existing forest product facility, or will be new entrants in the forest sector for the purpose of the project. In terms of project eligibility, studies must advance a concept, technology, process, or product primarily based on wood fiber, or integrated within new or existing industrial processes in the forest sector within the targeted innovation category. So study projects must disseminate project learnings beyond the applicant's corporate structure. It's expected that the study results will be widely shared. Applicants must be willing and able to share the results of their proposed work where no competitive advantage is compromised to be eligible for funding under this stream. Study activities may include product trials, market assessments or evaluations, engineering studies related to advances in commercialization, or prototype fabrication. Similar to the capital investments, IFIT will fund up to 50% of total study costs. The IFIT program will fund up to a maximum of $1 million per study. And funds are non-repayable, meaning that they do not need to be repaid to the Government of Canada unless the funds are not utilized for their intended purpose or are spent on non-eligible costs. It is important to note that companies may only receive funding for a maximum of 3 studies during IFIT's current 3-year funding cycle. The type of costs that you can incur as part of a project are relatively varied and may include materials, subcontracting, salaries, and more. For a complete list, you can consult the applicant guidebook. The guidebook also provides some additional detail on what some of those costs include, so please make sure that your proposal is very clear on the types of costs that you intend on incurring. Costs can only be incurred on or after the date which the contribution agreement is signed by both parties, and must be for costs directly linked to the project, and retroactivity may be considered on a case-by-case basis. Please note that study projects advancing bioenergy with carbon capture and storage, so BECCS projects, are eligible within this category. BECCS has been identified as an area with special considerations within the context of the IFIT program. So applicants proposing work on this topic are asked to contact the program for additional guidance prior to completing application materials. The limitations in this presentation may not necessarily apply to BECCS projects. The study's rated criteria will also differ from that of the capital investments, so we'll go over that now. Studies will be rated on the following criteria. First is the study relevance and the significance of opportunity. The proposed study should align with the IFIT program objectives by supporting potential investments that could lead to a more diversified or a higher value product mix. The application should demonstrate evidence of the challenge or market opportunity that the proposed study is targeting. It should also describe how the study is targeting an area of work that is supported by a broader strategic or government policy objective. The application should describe the commercial scale prospects that could result from the study and how the study could affect the applicant's competitiveness. Second is the implementation plan. The applicants should demonstrate how the study will be completed within the expected timelines and identify a source of funds to complete the proposed work plan. A description of the experience and expertise of the project team and consultants that will complete the study should also be provided. Studies are intended to be temporary and time-bound initiatives to achieve a specific objective in support of the future investment or a future strategic decision by the applicant. So preference will be given to applicants who propose the most credible and defensible project schedule. Then we have our knowledge sharing plan. So applications for studies must demonstrate the widespread benefits expected by the potential recipient of funding directly from the study itself, as well as any other co-benefits that could be achieved by a future investment as a result of the study. So applicants are also encouraged to identify spillover benefits, including environmental, social, and economic benefits. Applicants should be prepared to develop a knowledge dissemination plan to ensure that the results of the study will benefit the sector as a whole. And lastly is our diversity, equity, and inclusion. So diversity, equity, and inclusion measures are a required component of the contribution agreement and a mandatory project reporting metric. Preference will be given to projects that show a strong approach to improving diversity and inclusion within their Canadian corporate structures. If invited to the full study proposal, these application requirements will be mandatory for the full study proposal. Please review the application guidebook on the IFIT website for this full list, and make sure to keep checking the website for updates. The documents that will be required are the following: a financial analysis workbook, which will be provided, the study schedule in the form of a Gantt chart, a diversity, equity, and inclusion plan for which a template can be made available, the process flow diagram if applicable, site layout if applicable, and any letters of support if applicable. Great. So now we'll be moving on to part 3 of the presentation, where we will review the submission process for the program. So once again, you'll find the link to our online submission portal. All expression of interests must come through the online submission portal. If you are having technical difficulties, please reach out to the program inbox for immediate assistance, as we do have a guide that we can make available. Once a GC Key account has been created, you will receive a confirmation email. And once you have confirmed, you may need to wait at least half an hour before the system refreshes to allow you to apply. This is due to a cache that clears every 15 minutes. And a reminder that you must create an applicant profile prior to submitting your EOI. While completing the online form, you will notice that there will be tips found throughout the form. So if you hover over the field, you'll notice a little message that will pop up. You will be able to receive an error message if anything is not filled out as needed. So please read through the form carefully. The programs will be using an ongoing call for expression of interest. So project EOIs must be submitted during an application window, which will be open continuously from now until June 30th, 2024. Each window will last approximately 3 months. However, the first window is the shortest, with just 6 weeks for intake. This first window is intended for fast-moving projects that will be able to spend program funds this fiscal year. The remaining windows are intended for long-term multi-year projects that are currently in development. The program will process and assess proposals based on the submission date and will provide ongoing decisions as they are determined. We do encourage you to submit sooner rather than later because proposals will be assessed in the order in which they are received. So EOIs may be reviewed within 45 calendar days of submission. Efforts will be made to ensure that funding is distributed appropriately across all 4 windows. The funding windows provide 3 main functions. Firstly, the funding windows are intended to help provide deadlines for responses back. So as you can see, each window has a clear deadline for a program funding decision. Secondly, if your project is unsuccessful, we will not accept applications in the same window, but you may be allowed to resubmit in the following window. Finally, windows will also be open to all eligible recipients. However, the program reserves the right to target specific technologies to align with government priorities in any given window. This does not mean that other eligible projects will become ineligible, but they may not be given priority for funding during any targeted windows. So having said all that, the program will give an overview of our entire program delivery process. So the first step is to apply to the expression of interest process. The EOI will be accepted over one of the 4 funding windows as previously described. It's important for applicants to note that this application will be used to assist with self-screening on mandatory and rated program criteria and will help to prepare the department on the expected number and type of proposals that we'll receive. The online submission portal will confirm once you submit your EOI, so advanced submissions are encouraged. Please keep in mind that submitting an EOI is a mandatory requirement. If the EOI is not submitted, you will not be invited to submit a formal proposal for funding consideration. So projects must complete the EOI phase before moving on to the next phase. Once an EOI form is received, the program will complete an evaluation for eligibility and program fit. The program will then contact the applicants to share the rating of your EOI, and only applicants who are invited may advance to the full proposal stage. Once invited, the online submission portal will prompt you to submit a completed proposal form, accompanied by all the supporting documentation previously discussed. Submission of a project proposal does not guarantee applicants will receive funding under the program, and applicants will have 60 days to return their completed proposal after invitation. Once finished and all required documentation has been uploaded, the program will begin to process and review applications. Proposals will be assessed by a multidisciplinary panel of experts. Projects evaluated by the program will be subject to internal approvals and will receive a formal letter informing you on the status of your application. Projects will be notified of their status in these formal letters. Non-successful projects will be removed from our funding list. Projects may be waitlisted given their current status and ranking, and waitlisted projects will continue to be retained by the program for the remainder of the ongoing intake process, so you're not required to resubmit in a following window. Shortlisted projects will be asked to advance to our due diligence stage. So any shortlisted projects will advance to the due diligence, where the projects will be subject to additional financial and technical evaluations, and a trade risk assessment will be performed. Finally, projects who successfully complete the due diligence will begin negotiating a contribution agreement with NRCan. Please note that any approvals under this process will be conditional upon the execution of a contribution agreement. Until a written agreement is signed by both parties, there's no commitment or obligation on the part of the programs to make a financial contribution to any project. We want to highlight the key elements to a successful proposal to make sure that you can put forward the best proposal possible. So first and foremost, you should make sure that the proposal clearly highlights how the project is aligned with our mandatory and rated criteria. Your responses should be clear and concise, and you should use supporting metrics where applicable. Please respect the question character limits and keep the information as concise as possible. Contextual information about the project, its history, and metrics are important as part of the overall proposal, but please be clear on the scope of the project that you want us to participate in. You should ensure that all timelines are realistic for the project and align with the program's timelines. A strong proposal should have sufficient technical and financial supporting information, quality over quantity, and independently validated information where possible. Although you may not know all the elements of your project at this point in time, you should have a solid idea of how you will achieve the project objectives, including how you're going to bring your product to market. And finally, corporate management should also be on board to support the project. However, the formal corporate approval will only be required if your company makes it to the proposal stage. And lastly, based on previous calls, it's important to identify the appropriate risks and the project faces and the related risk mitigation measures that you propose. Missing information in the proposal can present challenges for the review panel in evaluating your proposal. So with that in mind, it's important to share with the program your consideration of two main types of risk: the innovation risk and the project delivery risk. As an innovation program, one of our main objectives is to use public investments to help de-risk investments that would not necessarily be taken on by traditional funding partners. So firstly, for your innovation risk, as part of this, we want to clearly see the demonstrated risk factors involved with the project. How does IFIT funding help to mitigate the innovation risk associated with your project? And how are we helping to de-risk technology or market risks for you? Secondly, in terms of project delivery risk, if you're invited to the full study proposal or full project proposal for capital investments, as part of the application package, you'll be required to complete a risks and mitigation measures table outlining potential project implementation risks, including IP, technical risks, or financing risks, to name a few. As mentioned, we understand that all projects include a level of risk, and we want those to be identified up front along with a series of proposed mitigation measures. So again, we want to encourage you to review the applicant guidebook for more detail, and we hope that you found this webinar helpful to address the program's requirements. That's it for our funding IFIT details, but we did want to share a few other funding opportunities before we give you a chance for a Q&A. So we've talked in depth about the IFIT funding program and highlighted the GC Wood program. In addition, the Canadian Forest Service has several other funding opportunities currently available. So please reach out to other funding opportunities if you think your project may be a fit. The Canadian Wood Fibre Centre will also be hosting a webinar series in September, so please visit their website for additional details if you wish to participate. For funding opportunities outside of the Canadian Forest Service, we encourage you to visit the Clean Growth Hub, who provide a customized service to pair you with an appropriate funding opportunity. We would like to reiterate that the first funding window will be closing September 30th, 2023. We will contact you with an EOI evaluation decision, and only invited applicants will be asked to submit a full project proposal. In the expression of interest application form, you should select the most appropriate funding mechanism. If you're unsure if you should be applying to the capital investment or the study stream, you can reach out to the program if you have any project-specific questions.